Yeah, I'm not saying don't treat people fairly. I think there's a fine line between treating people fairly and coddling folk. And I think with Gen Z, a lot of them have been coddled. A lot of them believe that everyone deserves a trophy, and everyone doesn't deserve a trophy. I'm sorry. Some of you suck. Some of you suck at certain things, and you need to know that. This is John Dunson, and welcome to another episode of I Take Your Point podcast. I am joined by my lovely co-host, Miss Lynn, who is apparently channeling the '70s because she has some type of disco hat on. I liked it. I like the hat, by the way. How are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you?
I am always better than I deserve. How's your week?
It's good. It was actually in the birthplace of your origin story this last week.
Great state, the wonderful state, the best state that God created of South Carolina. What were some of the wonderful things that you learned while you were in the great state of South?
I learned the term cola boys. I learned that people don't understand how to keep the air conditioned tone down really low, that they're fine with 75. I learned that it is extremely humid and hot. It's like a combination of Las Vegas and Houston all together. It's a lot, but it's a lot of greenery, so that was pretty.
Well, yeah, we're known for our greenery. We're known for a couple of things. But this is your first visit to Carolina?
South Carolina, yes.
Congratulations. You can check that off your bucket list of states that you visited. I take it that now that you've been once, you want to go.
Probably not.
That's okay. Well, I'm pretty sure the residents of the wonderful, great state of South Carolina will be happy to hear that. So, we had a couple of things that popped out this week in terms of interesting topics. One of the stories that was big in the news this week was Sydney Sweeney and the jeans advertisement with American Eagle. Miss Sweeney, for those who do not know, she is an actress who has starred in a couple of series, but the most famous one being Euphoria. Miss Sweeney made an ad about American Eagle jeans. And part of the issue was that she talked about how jeans are passed down from parents, how genes can be inherited, and how her genes passed down from her parents were genes of blue eyes and blonde hair. And I'm paraphrasing here, but the internet was up in an uproar because it gave off some eugenics overtones, specifically with respect to how it is that she talked about genes and the spelling of the genes. Wasn't genes in terms of blue jeans, Jeans. It was genes in terms of Genes. And so when you think about genes in that concept or in that respect, you are talking about race and you are talking about culture and how it is that this young lady who is blonde hair, blue eyes, doing this commercial about jeans that you wear, how it is that so many individuals were offended by that concept and that ad. What say you?
That's going to be something that just kind of speaks to making sure there's representation in the room. So when that advertisement came out, when they were storyboarding that, there needed to be representation for someone to say, "Hey, have you considered how this is going to be received?" And I don't know if that happened or not, but I think that's a case for making sure that there's diversity, that you're not operating with groupthink, and that you are inclusive of other people so that those things don't get out. And then you've spent millions of dollars on a campaign and that you now have to retract and spend millions of dollars more to come up with a different campaign.
But they didn't retract, they doubled down and
How
said,
did they put that down? I'm sorry.
we, we, we support what it is that Sydney Sweeney said. I take your point with respect to having representation in the room because there
Mm.
should have been someone in the room that went, hey guys, this is flirting with a line that's probably not what we want to be flirting with. Or maybe someone did say that and American Eagle was like, you know what? Shit, it's been a while since anyone has been talking about us. And this is going to get us a lot of clicks and this is going to get us a lot of play in terms of airtime.
Could have sworn that American Eagle had some controversy several years ago. It may have been a different company, but I thought they had something else that they had released maybe around Juneteenth or something. I may be misspeaking, that they also had to pull back. And so when you think about marketing and thinking about a campaign, that sometimes bad publicity is better than no publicity, right? So you go ahead and double down on it. People keep talking about it. We're talking about it. Other people will comment and talk about it. And then when it comes to a certain point, okay, I hear you. I'm going to go ahead and pull this down. But by that time, you've already amassed a great conversation and people have your name top of mind. So when they're going into, people still have malls. I think they do. When you're going into a mall or whatever these things are, that they're going to go into American Eagle. They may not necessarily remember why, but it is now in their head, like, let's go into American Eagle. Which before, I don't know who was going in there. I mean, I don't even know who was going into a mall, to be honest. That's another reason I'm going to get in trouble because they're like, now you're talking about the malls, girl.
You talk about a lot of stuff. You get in trouble for everything. A couple of points on the Sydney Sweeney thing. A couple of things that jumped out. One, and I may get in trouble for saying this. Sydney Sweeney is not known for having a nice ass. Sydney Sweeney is known for her breasts.
Dude, like, you're going to get in trouble with me over this. Like, what the fuck?
That is her calling card.
Like, I've never even heard of her before.
Literally, that's what she is known for.
Thank you. Go on.
Had it been a bathing suit ad that showcased, her tatas, then maybe that would have been a better representation. But
Okay.
Sydney Sweeney is not known for that. Now, the
Okay.
other thing that jumped out with respect to that was you had Gen Z up in arms about her allowing herself to be sexualized with respect to the advertisement. And I'm like, okay, this is Sydney Sweeney. Her entire career has been based on sexualization.
But I love Gen Z. I told you I love them. I can't wait to see what they're going to do with this world because they're just not down for this bullshit. It came from the baby boomers. It came from us. It comes to you. Like, you're just like, sometimes you'll say things, well, that's the way things are. That's the way that the world sees us. And these are just outdated things. And Gen Z is like, fuck this. No.
Okay, then Gen Z is also individuals that need a safe room. So come on, get over it.
So that's what I'm saying. Just because you don't think they need a safe room, if we treated people better, then I wouldn't be getting comments from somebody that says, I hope a white man beats your ass because of the things I said. Like being human and treating people decently. If you don't like something, you don't have to personally attack someone. Gen Z, they're changing the landscape. And they're saying that the rules of engagement that have led to the Me Too movement, that have led to Diddy Oil, that have led to all of these things. We're not for this, and I'm for them.
I'm for them on some things. I also think that they're extremely soft on some things.
That's your definition of soft. That leads men. God, I'm gonna go down the whole thing, but I'm gonna just tap on it real quick. That leads men and usually marginalized people not to speak up. Because then if you speak up, if something happens to you, you're labeled as soft. And so we continue the cycle of abuse.
No, no, no.
That's you, John. That's you.
Soft is I don't have to coddle you. I believe that Gen Z
You're different. Your definition of coddling could be different than someone else's definition of coddling.
coddling, it means being a helicopter parent. It means these kids not knowing how to interact with individuals socially, not knowing when they go into a restaurant and they see something that says MKT for market pricing, not knowing what the hell that means.
Is that okay? And I hear you saying that it's a society. I look at schools and I think a lot of that's going to be on the onus of school. I remember when the boys were growing up and I was like, which novel are you reading? We don't read novels. We just read excerpts. Excuse me? They never read a full novel. So they don't get the reps in for stamina. They're not expected to do anything outside of the internet. So a lot of the stuff goes back to the way that we have structured education as well. It's not just parents, helicopter parents, it's the entire generation of enabling children to rely on tools outside of their brain.
Back that, and I'm going to do a call back for something that you said, because I'm going to call you a hypocrite on this. You said last week or last episode, you pointed out the fact that, Gen X, when we were raised and growing up, we were allowed to do certain things. We were allowed to scrape a knee. We were allowed to go out and have adventures without our parents knowing what we're doing all the time. I think in some ways these kids are overexposed. Everything is a viral moment or has to be a viral moment. Everything has to be for the gram or for social media consumption. And everything has to be about making certain that I'm saying something and you're not hurting my feelings, and that you're validating me as an individual.
Why would we not do that? Like, validate people, treat people kindly. The other part that you're talking about is getting outside and getting scraped up. I agree with that. And it's funny because my mom will say, there's just so much crime now. I was like, Mom, this is the same damn crime there was before. You just didn't have the internet to know about it. The same shit was happening then. You just didn't know. You don't think, where do you think the milk cartons came from? Where do you think that we still have these unsolved mysteries? Now they're doing DNA, from familial DNA, like, oh, we caught you from 1968. That shit was still happening. Now we're more informed. And so we're taking strategic steps to ensure the safety of our kids. Now I will readily admit that I am a helicopter mom with a lot of gas, and I'm just all up in there. That's why I'm so exhausted half the time, because I am really engaged with my kids. But I think there are opportunities, like you, I will agree with you that there are opportunities to allow our kids to fail so they can grow, and not to always protect them for that. Because I do think that with failure, there's growth, not just for that individual, but for society. So if you look at the iPhone or the Mac and how many times there was failure, and then we get to this point where we have some terrific technology out there, but without that failure, never would innovate. We would never grow as a people. So there are some things that I take your point with, but treating people decently and treating people as people first instead of what you want, I'm all for that.
Yeah, I'm not saying don't treat people fairly. I think there's a fine line between treating people fairly and coddling folk. And I think with Gen Z, a lot of them have been coddled. A lot of them believe that everyone deserves a trophy, and everyone doesn't deserve a trophy. I'm sorry. Some of you suck. Some of you suck at certain things, and you need to know that.
Everybody has, no one is better. And this is something also that I raised my kids like my mom raised me. No one's better than you, and you're not better than anybody else. If you add up all of my skills and you add up all of my opportunities for improvement, they're going to be different from yours, but they're going to be the same. If you look at it across the board, like the bar is going to be the same. If you look detailed, they're going to obviously be different, because there are going to be people that are really great at math. I suck at math, but there are things that I excel at where they don't excel at. I just don't think anybody in this world is better than anyone else. I think they're different and they have different skills.
No, I think you're using it incorrectly.
Okay, so go on.
I think individuals can be better at certain things than
They
others.
can be better at certain things, but that doesn't mean you're a better person.
That's a
You're
different
just
argument.
better in that.
That is a
And
different.
I'm better in other things. And just like I literally just said that, let me help you with a bar chart, and you don't know what's in the bar chart. My bar chart is going to be the same bar chart as yours. When I start going into the details of the bar chart, it's going to be different. But the bar chart is still going to be 3 bars. You got 3 bars, I got 3 bars. My 3 bars look different because I'm good at some things, I suck at some things, you're good at some things, you suck at some things. But as a person, you're not better than me. You're just better in some things.
I agree with that. They're not a better person than you, but they are better at certain skills.
If everybody had the exact same skills and they had the exact same opportunities for improvement, then we essentially have Elon Musk just running around here.
What is it with you and Elon? You just have this thing about Elon today. You just don't like Elon. What did Elon do to you? Did Elon try
I'm
to
just,
influence you?
I'm 100% not his type.
You're in Austin. He is Austin. He's in Austin.
I am not. He's welcome by. He is not. Nope.
So with the Sydney Sweeney thing and the jeans thing, Sydney Sweeney is a part of Gen Z. She's also, and this is the other part that I found fascinating. This is why I find this politically interesting. Not only did American Eagle double down on what it is that Sydney Sweeney has said, Sydney Sweeney, for the first time a couple of months ago, decided that she was going to register to vote. And she registered in the state of Florida, and she registered as a Republican. Why is that important? It's important because Sydney Sweeney, over the past couple of years, and her family has skirted toward some things that are maybe a little racially insensitive, to say the least. In addition to that, what they've done is they've turned this now meme or ad with respect to American Eagle into a voting apparatus. And she is registering individuals to vote based on this ad that just came out. So from a standpoint, it's extremely brilliant from a standpoint of marketing. And it's also brilliant from the standpoint of having someone who looks like her and can speak to individuals who look like her, register for the Republican Party at that Gen Z level. With that, what do you have to say?
I think that for that particular thing, it's effective. And I am concerned about that because if the message can be interpreted that my genes, my white genes, my blue eyes, my blonde hair is better, and you are campaigning on that, that's problematic. That is a huge problem. You juxtapose that against the critical race theory. You juxtapose it at things that where black people are like, well, we want representation. Well, you're hurting white people. Well, when you say that blonde hair and blue eyes is essentially preferable, you hurt me.
I take your point there, but the other thing that's interesting to that is if you think about who it is that now seems to be the aggrieved race and sex of folk, and that's young white men. And those young white men see Sydney Sweeney as, okay, this is the definition of standard beauty, blonde hair, blue eyed. And she is
I
now
think the same thing. So, yes, go on.
she is now the standard in terms of what it is and how it is that we want to be perceived or perceive our race going forward. And we have an effective campaign to go out and identify and target these males to get them to register as Republican. You know, if they can pull it off, it's a marketing strategy. So for that, I'll tip my hat to them. Now, that said, Democrats need to step up and counter that with something.
What? What are they going to counter it with?
Well, you know, you have Beyonce. So
They tried that, still lost Texas. Next.
So the interesting thing about Sydney Sweeney and the Beyonce.
I love the fact that you used Beyonce as opposed to a darker, more ethnic looking woman. I love that for you.
You know why I use Beyonce? Because when the jeans ad came out, they pulled Beyonce in the argument and said, okay, well, you guys didn't think when Beyonce released the Levi's ad campaign a couple of months ago that it was about race. So now you're thinking it's about race because Sydney Sweeney is doing it. But when Beyonce was doing Levi's, you didn't have shit to say. This is this woke thing that's going around with you folks always making things about race. That's what, but now, had you been really tagged into the culture, you would have known this. Speaking of culture, I was reading this article about these celebrities and being, I believe, the most visual, buying to this concept called, they have this thing called a breeding fetish. Are you familiar with the breeding fetish?
No.
So the breeding fetish is apparently, as I understand it, individuals who are fascinated by getting women pregnant, by having multiple pregnancies. In the case of Mr. Cannon, it looked like he had 5 pregnancies that were happening at the same time, 5 women that were pregnant at the same time. Apparently, there's this thing that's going around where these guys get off on, I don't know if it's a power thing or a dominance thing of having multiple women impregnated at the same time, and it's called a breeding fetish. What say you about something like that?
It's a little reminiscent about eugenics. It makes me want to know a little bit more about what the motivator is. You said that they get off on that, but I'm thinking it's probably something a little bit deeper than that. You look at Elon Musk, he has a similar behavior with women. And so you're essentially populating the earth with more of your DNA. And so I think there's a little bit of narcissism there to think that your DNA is superior to someone else's and that the world needs more of your DNA. I also look at the women that are having the babies for them because you know how I feel about a father and the mother. And I mean, I know that's traditional and it's not everybody's journey. Just how big a part does will these men play in their children's lives? Again, that's kind of an old school way of thinking, but just kind of thinking through that, I think it's more about, for me, it's that narcissistic view from those men that think that their DNA is more superior than anyone else's. And so they need to make sure that the world is populated with that.
So yeah, you make a good point with respect to Elon Musk. I never considered, I don't know why, thinking of him in that realm, but he is obviously one who ascribes to the breeding fetish. I think the interesting thing that stood out to me is I agree with you that these guys are out here populating, and there seems to be no thought or very little thought given to the kids and having a day-to-day presence in the lives of the kids. I know with Mr. Cannon, one of the things that stood out was he was on some show a couple of months ago and they asked him to name his kids and he couldn't name all of his kids. And I'm like, okay, that's probably a sign that's not a good thing if you can't name 12 kids that you have.
I'm going to be honest. Sometimes I can't remember the two of mine, and they get called the dogs. So there's that.
Well, pretty sure they call you a couple things too. But no, I mean, just not being able to name your kids or not having a day-to-day presence in their lives. I get that, everyone doesn't have or everyone is not raised in a household where you have a mother and a father that's there and you're being raised by them simultaneously. And I get the fact that we have individuals who do believe in co-parenting or believe in having kids by multiple women. And maybe we're old school in the aspect that if it happens from the standpoint of if you're out here and relationships happen, that's one thing, but this is something that's a little different where you're actually having these guys that go out and seek. And again, it's not just the guys who are doing this. Obviously, the women are signing up to do it as well to create a child where the father may not be in the household or knowing that this individual has multiple kids that are being birthed at the same time.
Like I said, a little bit of hubris and eugenics in there, that there's this desire to populate more of your DNA out into the world, whether it's because you think that you're superior, because you're smarter, because the world needs more of that. I don't know what it is. It's just very curious to me that people would elect to do that. For the women, hopefully they have some structures in place where their kiddos are taken care of and they're getting everything that they need. It may not be from that father, but like you said, there are non I don't even want to say the word, but non-traditional households where other male figures will step in and be that father figure, whether it's an uncle or whatever that is, a family friend. And so hopefully they have stood that up so that the kids have what they need in order to feel supported as they navigate through life.
So one of the things that you brought up was the concept of eugenics and that's looking at it's going down a whole nother avenue in terms of other things that are happening. But I'm fascinated by these guys that are impregnating several women, in the case of, say, an Elon Musk, who look for a certain type of kids that look a certain way. Say you about that concept.
And this is going to be a little off the cuff, just thinking. It does remind me of a little bit of Nazi Germany, where you want a certain type of person. You want blonde, you want tall, you want blue eyes. And that is going to be the ideal of that person that they want and the person or people that they want to populate the earth with. Now, obviously, I have no idea what Elon Musk's type is, but I'm just giving you my initial thought of it. Obviously, I'm open to hear other people, but initially, when I'm thinking that you're looking for a certain type of person, and then you're looking for multiple people with your DNA, it's a little worrisome to me.
But let me push back there a little bit because I take your point on that and I agree with it. But the flip side could be how is that different from we're trending these days where you can actually go in if you're doing a surrogate or if you are using some other method to conceive a child, you can pick out what you want your child to look like.
Yes.
I want them to have blue eyes. I want them to be blonde. I want them to be 6'3". I want them to have two parents that were athletic. What say you about that concept? That's now, I mean, you have the ability to go in and do that now.
And I'm just going to ask a clarifying question on that. Are you saying for someone that's getting in vitro fertilization and picking, or two couples that are trying to conceive and then going in and choosing the DNA and the DNA structure for their child? I'm just trying to get a little bit of information on that.
Yeah, I think that it presents a slippery slope because if you are in terms of the in vitro and being respectful to everyone who is going down that avenue and has the ability and the resources to be able to do that, I think at the core, everyone wants a healthy child and wants a healthy baby. And at the core, if you have two parents or a couple, whether it's, cis, whether it's, male, female, whether it's male, male, female, female,
Right.
it can go in and obviously decide this is who or what we want our child to look like. And I guess the individuals who believe in breeding as how are we different from those individuals that are going in and looking at a computer saying, I want my child to be this, this, this. If I'm a breeder, I'm going to say, well, hell, at least I know that they have my DNA and I'm owning my stuff.
That's the only thing, the difference I have with that, and I have to segment it out, is the problem that I have or issue that I am concerned with is the multiple women and making 12 different women, 12 different babies. If people want to go in and they want to choose what their child is going to look like, I mean, I guess I'm trying to think of the challenge there. But if that's what they want, I mean, I'm kind of thinking about like when I had my kids when I was later in life. And so you had those, you had different tests that you took just to make sure that everything was okay. And then you had an opportunity to make a choice at that particular point, depending on the outcome of the test. And that's been going on forever, like with the amniocentesis and things like that. So I really don't know how I feel about people going in and choosing what their children are looking like on a one-on-one basis. I mean, that's their prerogative. I just have a slight issue with men spreading their seed all over the world and making sure that those women look a certain way. And so you just have all of these little mini Elon Musk running around, which to me just seems a little terrifying.
Yeah, I take your point on that, and I agree with that on some aspects. The interesting thing that you brought up, and this actually came up as I was reading the article, talked about those tests that you can give to find out whether or not there are going to be issues related to childbirth. You had a couple of guys say, well, if I found out that my child was going to be a child with special needs, or if I found out that my child was going to be X, Y, and Z, I would just terminate the pregnancy.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And, it's like, okay, so not only, and this was a part of the breeding conversation, and not only are you now saying that you're like hunting for the quote unquote perfect child. If
Right.
that child,
Exists.
right, if that, well, I was a perfect child. If that child doesn't have X, Y, and Z, and he or she does have special needs, then I don't want to be bothered with it because I'm trying to get the perfect race breed of individual. And I'm like you, it does remind me a lot of Nazi Germany going in and having that everyone has a certain look, or certain feel, or certain bone structure to be able to say, okay, this is what we define as a standard of beauty.
And so, you know how I always talk about sometimes it seems like it's in jest, but I really do lean into diversity. And I think that diversity helps cultures grow. Because if everybody is the same, there's no reason to grow. There's no reason to innovate. Usually, innovation comes when there's diversity, that there's a need, and then someone wants to solve it. And then that need, which specifically for one thing, it then is able to impact other areas, whether it's health, technology, whatever it is. But that wouldn't happen if everybody was exactly the same. So there's no growth, there's no opportunity to learn, there's no opportunity to evolve as people. That's just my opinion. And people saying that, if I got a test back and I found out that my kid had special needs, hypothetically, is different than reality. And so if you've carried a kid for 7, 8 months and something comes out, I mean, in theory, you can say whatever you want to, but when it actually happens, you just never know.
And that's a fair point. I take your point on that. You brought up something that was interesting with respect to understanding how it is that you have to grow as an individual. And one of the things that caught my attention this week was, and it's part of the conversation we had last week, and it's part of the community comments that we had with respect to our last episode, and talked about dating outside of your culture. Both of us obviously dated, and in our case, married individuals that were culturally different. In your case, you married Chad, using a euphemism for his name. And I married Becky.
Right? You married, I like to change your name to Abigail. I like that name.
Abigail. Okay. Okay. So Abby, I married Abby. And
Hmm.
so for me, one of the comments that jumped out was because of where I matriculated school, which is the greatest university God ever created. And because of my love and passion for the culture, how is it that I ended up marrying someone not of the culture, not once, but twice? And that is a valid question that when it happened, um, sort of caught me off guard because I wasn't looking to get in a relationship, definitely not looking to get in a relationship with someone that wasn't of the culture. You don't not see color because that's disrespectful because you have to see color to navigate the world that we live in. And full transparency, the fact that I was or am who I am with respect to having very strong beliefs with respect to support for the African American community, that was a struggle in the early stages of my marriage, and is something that caused us to separate and ultimately get divorced the first time, because Abigail would say that I hated white folk. And it wasn't a hate for white folk. It was me understanding that there were certain things that I felt strongly about with respect to the culture and with respect to how it is that certain things were presented. And if you are not Black, it can be harsh to hear some of those things phrased in the manner that I was probably phrasing them. And so from that standpoint, it provided me an opportunity to grow and say, okay, I can say what I need to say, but not be mean spirited about it. And I can say what I need to say and still support my culture and not lose my identity. At the same time, allow me to love who it is that I love. And it's always fascinating to me when I look at couples who are from different cultures, and I know some of the conversations that have taken place, because I believe you have to be equally yoked in a couple of areas. You have to be equally yoked financially, spiritually, emotionally, and the family structure, which we just talked about with respect to the breeding aspect. There's so many different facets that I think make up a relationship that you have to navigate not only those nuances internally, but then after you've navigated them and had those conversations internally, then you need to have those conversations externally. And so it's always fascinating when you go into a space and you are part of quote unquote the tribe, where that person could be of another culture, and you see how you're received, or you see how people respond to the person that you are with. And as a Black man, sometimes I had blinders on. I didn't see certain things, but Abigail would see those things, and she would ask me if I noticed certain things. Oh, no, but I just found that aspect of the partnership and relationship different or interesting. What say you about your experience, man?
Interesting that you brought up that last part, because that was a similar thing that happened with us, that Chad would say, "Oh, they're looking at us." And I was like, "Maybe they like looking at beautiful people." Like, I mean, I don't know. Why do you care? I was the first person of color that he ever dated, that he ever had a relationship with. And so I don't know if it was something that was more noticeable to him, but I don't tend to spend a lot of time focused on external things. I mean, that's probably why I'm going to become a Dateline victim, because I don't pay attention to my external world. But it was something that I think was important to him, and something that could have been a source of contention with us, because I'm like, who cares? Like, who cares? Are they paying our bill? Are they sleeping in our bed with us? Who cares? But it was something that he always noticed. And I think that because I was more internal and he kind of just looked at the world as a whole, that was a little bit of a source of contention with us. And especially when we had the boys, my youngest son was essentially blonde and extremely light. So for him, it was people would think that I was his caregiver, not the mom, but the caregiver. And I think that bothered Chad as well. But for me, I was like you. I didn't even see those people. Thank goodness I wasn't driving, because I probably would have hit them. Like, I just don't pay attention to people outside of my area and my space, because I just don't feel that their opinion is going to define anything that's going on in my life.
One of the things that I struggled with early on was how much to begin to be immersed in the culture and how much I was going to pull back with respect to being immersed in the culture. By that I mean that, I've always made it a point since 1987 to make certain that I support Black businesses, that I support Black culture when it comes out, whether it's television, whether it's movie theaters, or whether it's the arts, whether I support Black literature when it's happening. And part of the conversation early on in the relationship was, I'm going to continue to do those things. And it'd be nice if you went with me to those things. If not, then that's fine. I'm going to go still. And so that conversation occurred in the beginning where, in a lot of ways, Abigail will say that she was Blacker than I am in some ways because she was much more immersed in some things than I was.
Actually say that she's blacker than me. You've said that on many occasions, and I take offense to that.
And so one of the things that was very interesting was to watch the exposure and experience to certain aspects of the culture, whether it was, again, attending, especially in Atlanta, attending Black restaurants, whether it was going to Black restaurants, whether it was attending events that we had from a cultural standpoint in terms of music, and watching that aspect of my wife be able to get it, understand it, and appreciate it. The other thing that did come up as a part of the cultural thing was, how do you navigate having conversations about race in your day-to-day life, because some things you may see that they may not see, and you don't want to come off as the angry Black woman or the angry Black man who's always thinking that things are racial. How were you able to navigate that?
That was a little bit of a challenge. And to be super honest, I mean, it was a challenge because you sometimes feel like you're seeing dead people. And because they don't see that, and that's not their experience. And so it has to be this open communication. If you say that you see it, then give me the space and the grace to explain it. It can't always be shut down. You're seeing things, it's probably you. I mean, in my case, it probably was me because I was probably challenging someone. When you think about that, obviously everybody's relationship is going to be different. And I think that some of the things that you're bringing up, to be honest, those were contention points in our marriage. As you grow and as you become the person that you are, you're not the same person at 30, at 40, at 50. And so more things become important. Like for me, when COVID hit, I think I got outside of my bubble, and maybe it was because I was forced to do that. And I started to see more inequity, and it bothered me. I had talked about it before when I was younger, that I was very militant. I'm the next Angela Davis. And then but it didn't become as important to me as I moved through my life. But then during COVID, it became very important to me. And there was just a lot of different events that really spoke to me. And you want a partner that you can share those things with, and you'll be able to talk about the different aspects of it. And we were just in different spaces at that particular point in our lives. And actually, right after COVID, we separated and got a divorce. Not because we hated each other or anything, but we were really just grew apart. And the things that were important to me weren't necessarily important to him. And I think for me, I didn't have the husband that would say he was blacker than me. That would not have ever occurred. So, like I said, I was the first person of color that he ever dated. And as I became more interested and immersed in the Black culture and the inequities that were happening and how I wanted to support those things and how it just spoke to my soul, I didn't have a partner that I could share that with. And that was unfortunate. And so I think that, like I said, we grew apart, and I remember right after we grew apart and we talked about the rubric last week, I had this ridiculous list. Sometimes people make this list, and I had on the list, you have to be this black if you want to ride this ride. I wanted the blackest black with the whitest teeth. And that's what I wanted. And I just went from one extreme to the other because I was like, I just wanted someone that I could share these experiences as I grew into this person with. And unfortunately, like I said, my husband wasn't there. He grew in a different direction. And so for me now, not that I'm seeking out one particular person or race, but I'm doing a lot of that work on my own because I know that sometimes you're not going to find a partner that can share every single aspect with you. So a lot of times I will read on my own, have conversations with other people on my own, and do that work myself.
I have a comment, and I want to ask you this question because I find it interesting and fascinating. It's been my experience that couples, especially couples that are in mixed marriages or mixed relationships, there is some type of compromise that is made with respect to comfort level and with respect to where it is the couples may live. When you were electing where you live, was it much more comfortable for you to make certain that he was comfortable versus you being comfortable, meaning in a community that was much more accommodating to white folk than black folk?
And I will say this, and I know that some people had made comments about me being in Orange County and that there's diversity. I grew up in San Clemente, California. There ain't a lot of diversity going on around there unless you are of Latin descent and white. Not a lot of people that looked like me. And so for me, I felt comfortable being around white people, being in white spaces. Chad, not so much. And so when we looked for places to live, places to bring the kids to, it was more about what made him comfortable. And like I said, he would see things that I didn't see. And so if we went into spaces that were predominantly Black, there was uncomfortableness for him. And so I did make compromises that, okay, we will do this. And like I said, I was perfectly fine with it. I grew up that way. So I was fine with it. But then as I got older, and I started to grow into a different version of myself, that those spaces became important to me. And especially like with my youngest son, who is blackety black, and he'll start the next Black Panthers, that being in Black spaces for him was important. And just a quick little story, our youngest, like he would go get his hair done. Like he's obsessed with his hair and it has to be a particular way. So he would go to a Black barber. And you know what goes on in barber shops. They're just doing what they're doing everything and they're talking about everything. And so he sent me a message and said, Mom, can you take me to the barber shop? Dad doesn't know what's going on. And I said, so we've got a problem. We've got a problem because first off, I'm not sitting in a barber shop and that is a little disrespectful to your dad. And so your dad will continue to take you there and we'll manage around it, but I'm not going to be doing it. Eventually, I'll tell you, because I break all the time, I did start doing it and I hated it. I hated it so much that one of the barbers said, I can tell that you're uncomfortable. Would you like for me to just come to your house and do this? Yes, I would like that. Thank you so much. So that became important because my son, as he grew, and he started to be in the culture. And you would ask him, we talked about biracial kids last week, I believe, and he identifies as Black. And you ask him why, and he's like, because of the culture, the community, there's just more richness there. And so I remember when he was a preteen, he's in the bathroom, he's blasting rap music. And he's blasting the rap music that his nana would be like, what in the world? And his dad is screaming, turn it down. And I'm just kind of laughing, like, you've got a Black son. Like, he loves Black. So you're going to need to get on board with this. So a lot of times I would take the boys into a lot of Black culture, Black art, Black whatever, because that's something that was important to them. They're close to their dad's side of the family. And so they had a different experience. My kids, they want to be Black. And so I'm like, I'm not going to, whatever you want, whatever course you chart, I'm going to help you get there. And so we would spend a lot more time in Black environments. He's got a lot of friends. Like he's got a very diverse group of friends. And the majority of them are kids of color. And just because he likes the music, he likes the culture, he likes the community, he likes the loud laughter, he likes every single thing about being Black. When he was, I know I'm kind of monologuing, but he was little, we were at a restaurant. It was me and the boys. And I remember him saying, he looked over at this table and there was this Black family, Black dad, Black mom, two Black kids. And he's probably 6 or 7. And so he says in a 6 or 7-year-old whisper, which you know is like a freight train, I wish I had a Black family. And I was like, Lord have mercy. And so I was like, do I need to sit outside in the sun, kid? Because no one is going to, I'm not passing for anything. I'm Black. And so I was like, what do you need? And when I think about this, and again, it harkens back to last episode, there's something about the Black family that appealed to him and that is important to him. And so because it's important to him and it appeals to him as his mother, I feel that I owe it to him to make sure he's exposed to the things that are going to help him be the man that he's growing into.
I'm happy to hear that for your son. I know having a mother like you can be challenging because you are a wonderful individual with some strong opinions on certain things. And I'll leave it at that. I'll be nice this week. Quick question. What was your biggest misconception about white folk before you started dating or married a white person?
I didn't have any misconceptions because white people were in my house all the time. And I did. The only thing that I could say was the worrying about other people and what they were thinking. Like that was just, I still today, why? Why do you care? But other than that, I didn't have any misconceptions about anything. I think that some of the quirks that he and I both have were just unique to us, like hiding socks underneath the bed for me to go on a little hunt to go find them and wash. Why is this happening? I do not want to play a game. I just want to wash clothes. Why are you doing this? But other than that, no, I don't think I had any. There was nothing that was unique because he was white that was surprising to me.
You know what was surprising? You know what's surprising for me, and I'll own this, is that white folk did not, at least my wife, did not use a washcloth. It was soap. It wasn't, I grew up in a household that had a hand towel.
Know if that's necessarily limited to white. I think that might be more of a European thing.
Okay, typically Europeans are white.
Okay, well, there are black people that live over there too, John.
I didn't say there weren't black people that lived in Europe, but I'm saying typically when you say European, that is a euphemism for white. So the washcloth thing was probably something that, and we're talking about stereotypes here. The washcloth thing was something that sort of took me by surprise. And then we'll laugh every now and then about white folk washing their legs, because there was this meme that was going around a couple of years ago that was about when white folk take a shower, they just let the soap drip down and so they don't wash the legs.
So that was not the experience in this house. You will be washing every crevice of your body or you won't be getting in this bed.
I take your point on that. All right. On that note, thank you, ma'am. What do you have planned for the rest of the week?
I am headed to the great state of Louisiana this week. The kiddos come back, but I have some work and some business there. I just seem to go to every hot place in America. Fall, where are you?
Getting you ready for where you'll be spending eternity.
Oh my God. Wow. That was, if I had feelings, John, they would be hurt. But thank God I have two boys and I gave those up a long time ago.
Good. Well, safe travels to the great state of Louisiana. I think they'll appreciate having you there. On that note, it's been a interesting conversation today. We talked about the culture. We touched on breeding, touched on dating outside of the culture. You shared your experiences. I've shared some of mine. It's been fascinating to hear about how it is that as a society, in some ways we're moving forward, but in a lot of ways we're moving back. And it's heartbreaking to read and see about the eugenics thing with the ads that are coming up. Even if it's unintentional, you know that it's wrong. You've been told that it's wrong, but you're still doubling and tripling down on it. On that aspect, ma'am, thank you for spending some time with me today. To our audience, thank you guys for spending some time and having a conversation with us. Continue to send those comments. Obviously, Miss Lynn is reading those comments and they're striking a nerve with her, so continue to do that. That's always good. As always, we know that you have many things that you could be doing with your time. We're glad that you decided to spend just a little bit of that with us. And as always, take some time this week to do something nice for yourself. And while you're at it, make some time to do something nice for someone else. Until next time, we'll talk to you.
Thanks for tuning in to another lively conversation and I Take Your Point. This podcast is a production of the SME LLC Media Group. All rights reserved. If you are enjoying the show, hit the subscribe button in the top right corner. And don't forget to like, share, comment, and check out past episodes. Until next time, take care and be well.